All right. Hey, everyone. This is a week two of the 2070 season in the CBA. Here's our standings after, two real life weeks, probably about 2 months in game, maybe a little more. So I am Big E. I'm the general manager of Boston. With me is Michael, the general manager of Philadelphia. Say hi.
Hello. What's
Yeah, and also the reigning the current top team in the top league, Adam, the GM of Cleveland. Want to introduce yourself?
What's going on?
All right. So, and there's a couple more that might be popping in. Um, so I guess just to review, I believe there should be a way to check. Um, that's fine. Last time we were here, I believe Cleveland was still on top in the Premier League, and it doesn't look like much has changed, except that we see like DC, really kind of climbing back up, which has kind of been fun to see.
Mark is just coming up real strong behind me.
You get
Really, the
nervous?
better team. The only thing that I'm hanging on is pitching. Other than that, Mark is just their team. Like an
Gotcha. Yeah, I think you're both really, really good. I think pitching does mean a lot. One thing I will bring up, and I was looking at this yesterday, if you go to batting stats, I mean, you mentioned pitching, but like your offense is literally skews the league because average run scores is 234, we'll call it. Only three teams are higher than that because you and DC, but mostly you. I mean, your offense is just leagues better than everybody else. I mean, it is like pretty apparent to look at, like just how dominant it is. So we'll see. We'll look at the same idea with pitching too. Less of a split, but even then, I mean, you and DC are still neck and neck in ERA, and he does have the advantage in FIP and XFIP, so it'll be an interesting season definitely. But I,
be close.
hmm um, after that, Phoenix was in a playoff spot too, and I think the fourth team last week was Kentucky, if I'm remembering correctly. And now I'm just gonna shout myself out. I have kind of snuck up in there. If you look at like run differential, it's an interesting view, specifically in the PL, because you see teams like New Orleans, which are currently on the hot seat, that really shouldn't be. Then you see teams like Kentucky, which are nearly, not that far away from a playoff spot. I mean, Kentucky's 3 games out of a playoff spot, and they should be by run differential, on the hot seat. -32 run differential is pretty ugly. So Toronto has underperformed. I really wouldn't be surprised if right now, and I shouldn't say this because it's my team. I think for the teams in the Premier League, I think we have a very clear top two. Then we have like this second tier, which I would include myself in, and then there's like a third tier. Well, and then there's like the Miami Carolina tier. Sorry, Miami and Carolina, but um, I really would think that of the second tier teams, which is Phoenix, my team, Boston, Toronto, I think I'm gonna be the odd man out. I think if I had to bet money right now, I finish fifth, and then Phoenix and Toronto finish third and fourth, maybe fourth and third. But other than that, it's just interesting. I think Carolina.
Bob's not here, but I'm gonna predict that Bob's gonna do something big near the death because Bob does. He's gonna be there at the playoffs. All that.
So, Adam, real quick, I do think your microphone's cutting in and out a little bit. Maybe
yeah, it's
like
cutting in and out over here too.
lower the threshold or whatever it may be. But yeah, I would agree. Toronto. I mean, Bob's typically pretty active with whatever it may be. I know you made a lot of trades this past week. Um, so he's gonna do something, especially because I think he's probably going to be down a player or two. Like maybe I'm not to put this out in the world, but what happens if Bungo goes down? And right now he's day to day and out for a week. So yeah, I would definitely expect to see um, Toronto making some moves, and that's kind of why I think I have to make some moves if I don't want to fall behind. So, and I think Tommy, the GM for Phoenix, is probably in the same boat. Where I don't know, I feel like a lot, especially when you get to like the top teams, like they're just so aggressive. You can't you can't even catch your breath. So,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of at a point where I've traded all the like assets I'm comfortable trading without like mortgaging my future too much. So,
Mm.
Philly GM here.
Alright, so that-
I probably won't make any moves, but I am getting a couple guys that had 4 WAR last year back from injury. So
who are you getting back soon?
Richards and Moore. Richards is back now, and back next week.
Richards, who
Sure, right fielder. Yeah.
had some good years, and Moore, who a lot of power. Yeah, I mean that's going to be a difference maker. So I guess I got that to look forward to. So yeah, it's getting pretty tight in the pretty tight at the top, and I guess that second tier of the Premier League. I'm interested to see what Kentucky does because the general manager of Kentucky is his name's Cole, and he typically uh, he's always comfortable pushing in chips to win now, and historically I'm in 2 different leagues with him, and so I guess I'm waiting for him to do something pretty big that's going to disrupt my plans. So any closing thoughts on the PL before we jump to the Silver League?
Well, I just wonder what big moves are out there. Sorry, go ahead, Duncan.
Well, it was Adam, but
sorry.
since you mentioned Kentucky, don't forget Cole won back-to-back TOCs back in the 50s.
Yep.
So
Yep, at the helm of Las Vegas.
Yeah, he was the general manager of Las Vegas, and he had an elite team, back-to-back champions, and then he switched to Kentucky after a brief spell away from the league. So yeah, again. I think. Adam, have you won a TOC?
I have not. Last season was the first season that I actually won a series.
Oh, really?
Within 1 year.
Yeah, so for the history, Cleveland lost to Phoenix in the championship, like the finale, last year. Has Mark won a TOC?
No. I don't think so. No, I think he has. He won 1, I believe, didn't he?
No,
he's either won a Premier League or a TOC, but I don't remember.
He's won the Premier League a couple times, but he has not won a TOC.
Because I'm just looking through the league now, because Phoenix, Toronto, Kentucky, Minnesota, Carolina. I know that either the organization or the GM has won a TOC. So it's just interesting to think about. And then there's I guess some other teams that are fighting. And I'm not sure about Miami or New Orleans, that history. All right, so moving on to the Silver League. I believe this hasn't changed too much since last week. All that we really see is Cincinnati continue to distance themselves from the rest of the pack. Cincinnati, they have some of my favorite players in the league. I just think they're a fun team to look at. But yeah, they're definitely tearing apart the Premier League, looking like they're going to be a problem next week. Next season in the. They're tearing apart the Silver League and looking like they're going to be a problem in the Premier League. They had Perales. He came back from the injured list, and he's been, a 231 weighted runs per created plus. That is like road to the show numbers. So this is a well put together team, good hitting, good pitching. Then there's New York, and one thing I just want to. This might be only interesting to me, but you look at like the run differential in the Premier League, and it gets pretty gross. You look at the run differential in the Silver League, and nothing really changes, and then in the Bronze League, only a little bit changes. So, all that I'm trying to say is that maybe there's just less of a skill gap in the Premier League between all the different teams, and maybe luck plays a larger component. But when there's a bit more distance between, say, Cincinnati and Mexico City, or Detroit and Vancouver, and Philly or Los Angeles, I think you see a lot of large, swings. And I really do think, I'm pretty sold on this top 3 for the Silver League and this top 3 for the Bronze League. I just think that's an interesting observation. So New York's played well. I think I'm trying to think. I really don't think either of the Silver League teams have made any big additions so far, like mid-season trades or whatever.
I'd like to chime in on that, actually, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the standings, it's 3rd to 9 is incredibly close. And so it's kind of wide open for whoever does make moves. And I think you've got some of those teams that have guys that are on the brink of major league ready in the minors that you could see be making some moves. And I'm going to call out Denver 8-2 in the last 10. Like they're storming back into the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, between, within 5 games, you have, third and eighth place. So you're right. I guess I might just be a little more biased towards run differential then, and I guess I'm biased because I think I guess I just believe in Tampa Bay a little bit more than everybody else. So, but yeah, I mean, you're right. Anything is possible. Does anyone see a team that isn't Cincinnati and New York finishing 1-2? Yep, I think that's
Tampa
kind of
could definitely get up there, even though they're 5 games back. Just because Greg, can't count him on either. He's one of the best in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then I believe we had Mexico City here at dead last week, and that is, again, I think I mentioned it then, I'll mention it again now. I think that is the plan. I think that is the plan. All right, any closing thoughts on the Silver League?
I am, as the person who sent Zach Suter to the Silver League, I'm interested to see how he does there. He is, of all of the pieces I sold off recently, he's probably the one that I was most attached to. So I'm very interested to see how he does for Las Vegas.
Yeah, it looks like a good player. So why are you so attached to him? Was he like a top pick? Or
he
just...
was one of the main pieces that I got from Carolina for Pierce Andrew, and he looks like a little mini Pierce Andrew.
Yeah, lefty, a lot of velo. How's he done? So he pitched pretty well for you in the Bronze League. It'll be interesting to see how he handles that jump to the Silver League.
Where there aren't a lot of lefties right now, right?
In the Silver League, I'm not quite sure actually.
I think we were talking about that recently in general chat about how the meta in Premier League is for lefties, but not so much in the Silver League.
The problem with Suter is that he's a lefty pitching for Las Vegas, which is kind of paradoxically the one place you don't want to pitch lefties because it encourages, right-handed batters, which already have an advantage there. So his impact is a little bit lessened where he is now.
Now, I'm unfamiliar. Does Las Vegas have a crazy park?
Yeah, so Las Vegas's park factors is really punishes left-handed batters and really encourages right-handed batters.
Yeah, so, I mean, you see 327 down the line in left field. That's... Well, I mean, you kind of same thing down the line at right.
Well, the actual distances down there don't matter. It's just the factors that matter.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is there a way for me to look at that for lefties and righties, or do I just get the overall view?
Yeah, it's all right there in front of you, like the average overall. But then you can see right-handed batters have a decided advantage over left-handed batters.
Okay, I'm just blind. No, that's
with
a good
the adjustments in the last
observation.
offseason, it's much more offense friendly. But before that, it really stood out as more right-handed batter friendly.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That's something I didn't know about Vegas. I haven't had to play them too much, I guess. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It does say that he pitches a little bit better versus righties than lefties, according to my scout anyway. But I mean, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. And he's a fly ball pitcher too. I'm always a little hesitant about that. Just, I guess, me being a bit.
Well, he may pitch better against righties, but the righties are going to hit better against him too. So it's kind of a give and take.
True.
Yeah.
So does Indianapolis buy at deadline?
Oh, Robbie did poke in yesterday and say he was going to be active. So
I feel like he's going to push. He's been riding the fence. I know I've talked to him a couple of times, but try to see if he was buying or selling.
He has a couple young hitters that I really like. I'm going to shout out I think I mentioned him last week. Cody Ford, I'm a big fan of. Ellis, I'm a big fan of. Lingle, I'm a big fan of, and you're paying him $55 million too. Mankey, Carl, he was one of my guys that has sadly not performed too well for him, that he picked up, but should be a decent hitting catcher. You look at these offense, I mean, he has probably a top 2, top 3 offense in the Silver League and a lack of pitching. I think you have to try to go for pitching, but at the same time, Dave Godley is one of my guys, and he's currently in the midst of like the worst year of his career. So I mean, well, I guess maybe it's a little unlucky is the better term for it. So maybe it's just a matter of time for the pitching to start clicking. I mean, they're first in strikeouts, and they got a good defense too. So I mean, if you're Indy, I mean, right now you have your window. Right now you have your young, cheap guys, and when they leave, what are you going to do? I think here it's worth it to take the gamble, see if you can push for Premier League. Personally, if I was a GM, I think when Robbie said he's going to be active, I think that makes sense. Don't just tread water. Go all in my opinion.
Another advantage I think Tampa and Las Vegas have over Indy and Denver is their propensity to trade. I think that GMs that don't trade a lot, it's hard for them to just all of a sudden go get the pieces they want, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree, and I'm just going to think about that in general. I think trading is kind of a skill in its own right, where especially when I first joined the league, I personally made some very bad deals. But the more I trade, the better trades I make. And that's kind of like an advantage when you talk to some GMs and say, hey, I'm kind of scared because this league has a weird trade valuations because of the structure and whatever, and it's a skill, and you gotta build that skill if you want to be a top tier team, in my opinion.
Absolutely agree with that. When I joined the league, I was really bad at trading. I've made some legendarily bad trades, but through doing that, I think I got better at trading, and I rarely make really bad trades anymore.
Yeah, so that's my piece of advice if you're a new GM is don't be afraid to make trades. The easy way to make sure you don't get burned is to talk with other GMs. I do that regularly, and just to make sure that you're not getting burned, and then you'll understand it and you'll build that skill, and then you can, either Duncan or Adam said that you can, learn to go get the guy you want, and that's a important skill to being a top GM in my opinion. All right, any closing thoughts in the Silver League?
No, I think so.
Gotcha. On to the Bronze League. We got Detroit on top, followed by Vancouver and Orlando. I don't think too much has changed here. The only thing,
I heard make more trades.
That really should be the clear-cut top 3 in the BL in some order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, they're very close for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Winnipeg is doing. Galveston started off really hot. That's why they're up there. But yeah, I don't see any reason Detroit, Vancouver, and Orlando aren't 1, 2, 3 somehow.
I think we have
somebody switched to buy too. Somebody went from sell to buy.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think we have a couple Bronze League GMs in here. Any of you guys want to speak up on your thoughts or plans?
My plan is to just keep losing. I'm fielding the worst team I have ever fielded right now. It's not for keeping guys down that deserve their shot either. I don't have better options ready.
Somehow Tyler is still out tanking you. Somehow.
Yeah, somehow.
I've been doing my best to try to lose it.
Tyler Los Angeles has amazing pitching right now, or at least 2 good pitchers. I've sold all that off.
I keep losing to Orlando, or I keep losing to LA. I can't beat them.
I just want to take a peek at their pitchers. They got some decent guys, I guess. I mean, this guy's probably got a little bit of value. Yeah, not horrible as far as pitching goes. I guess it is pretty bad. But I guess from a ratings perspective,
yeah.
Chris Isles, Boston legend.
Who announced his retirement?
Yeah, and he put Tyler, who runs LA, is like, thank God.
Yeah.
He had a good career though. Just to, I guess, give him a little shout out. Put up 20 WAR. He pitched over 2,000 innings, so he had a good career. A lot of time, did not realize he spent so long in LA, but those years were not that good.
Yeah.
He pitched
a lot
well
of players
for me,
that you could say that about.
Yeah.
Didn't know how long he spent in LA, and all those years weren't that good.
That's true. All right. So it'll be interesting to see. Do you have any strategies you're going to encounter to, stink even more? Going to start, having your DH catch or play center field or something?
Oh, my DH sucks to start with. Joey Ward
Ward.
Hey, this is
I forget what I paid
Boston
for him, like a
guy.
6th round pick, but yeah, he is not good.
The thing is,
any new GM, you look at Joey Ward, that is a non-attainable skill set. You cannot use this player.
Well, I think I traded him to you.
Yes, you did. I think I paid like a 6th round pick or something for him.
But isn't this kind of the skill set that is like in vogue in 23, where you're seeing a lot more, power eye guys?
My idea was going back to ballparks. My ballpark rewards left-handed hitters. So I was just thinking left-handed power. He's not going to hit for average, but he'll hit some bombs and keep the fans happy in a shit season.
I mean, this is like the Joey Gallo build.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of like, yes, you're right, but also that contact and avoid K combo are just below a certain threshold where it's just not feasible to use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's running the deadly combo of a 40% strikeout rate and a 200 BABIP. That is
Did he get worse? I thought he looked better when I traded him.
His contact did drop a bit.
Yeah.
And his power technically did drop a little bit, according to my scout. Let's see what OSA thinks.
OSA is all over the place on him.
Yeah, they don't really know what's happening here. But he was a 70 grade guy, according to them. Hard-hitting analysis by OSA. But yeah, this was a guy who has kind of floated around. He was a guy that I literally just think I was like one of those random international guys I got. And then I dealt him to Toronto, and then Toronto, I think, got tired of him, dealt him to Galveston. Galveston sent him to Philly, where he's now. So just bounced around. Just to give like a little hint, if there's a guy who's like 31, 32, and has never like played consistently at any level, he's not good.
Yeah.
I guess you always hope for like, your late career guy that's bounced around, maybe like a Max Muncy type. Like, or I feel like every 5 years the Dodgers pick up a guy and he just does crazy. I don't really think that happens too much in the CBA. So, yeah.
There's been a couple examples, but they're not notable. They weren't like big guys. They were just guys in their 31, 32 who had, a 2 or a 3 WAR season.
Gotcha.
That's about it.
Yeah.
This guy should be dealt, dude. What are you looking at? Okay, are you planning on? Well,
No, he is absolutely available. He's just he just recently started filling in at third base. Robbie Gonzalez started hitting, so he earned his way back into the shortstop starting position, which is where Tanaka was starting.
So I think that's your problem, is you're thinking rationally. And if you want to get that first overall pick, you gotta be, man, this guy.
It's hard. It's hard to turn that off sometimes.
What we're looking at right here is your new first baseman.
No, Robbie Gonzalez is a guy that's probably going to walk at the end of the season because I can't seem to trade him. Same with Tyler Parisi. They're both up on.
You can't trade this guy.
You're telling me I've been trying. Maybe I'm trying to deal him for too much, also, but certainly willing to come down.
What's his offer right
Talk
now?
to Duncan. Hire Duncan. Duncan will get rid of him for you somehow.
Hey, that's the second part. The first part of that trading skill is getting the guy you want. The second part of that trading skill, and that's like level 2, getting rid of the guy that you really want to get rid of. That's
Right.
something I can't do. But good
I haven't
GMs
perfected
can.
that one yet.
Bob,
I can usually get the guy,
no,
but I can't
Bob
always
is
get rid of the
very
guy.
good at that. I mean, Bob will he can unload some dudes, and it's like, how did he pull that off? So
Yeah.
It's a hard skill to get down because you gotta tell your crap to people and pretend it's not crap.
True. Yeah, so let's just take a look at the top tier teams. You look at Detroit, all offense, not a whole bunch of pitching. I mean, best starter ERA, worst bullpen ERA. Not worst, but pretty rough bullpen ERA.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
often.
he just took 2 big losses in the bullpen too, or 2 big injuries, I should say.
Oh yeah, because this was like the first week of the season, right?
It was
Not quite,
early
but
on.
early. This is a big loss. Luckily, that's just a torn UCL, and I say that because I do believe that the type of injury does matter. And I've seen pitchers.
Oh, just a little torn UCL, no big deal.
Yeah, but so every time I've ever lost a pitcher to a shoulder injury, they're done. Their career's over. They're never going to be the same.
Shoulder's career ending.
But elbow, you'll come back. You can blow out your elbow, get that shit patched up, and you'll be back. So
get some Tommy John, you'll be all right.
Yeah, it's all the rage. And they got Tony Pond, so I didn't even know. I did not know.
Just signed him last one of the Sims this week, pretty recently.
Yeah, signed him 2 weeks ago in game to $12 million a year. I mean,
yeah, Ponce didn't even play last year, but he is a league legend.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at this dude's ratings, and you're like, yeah, he should be like really, really good. So I had him. I tried to start him. Not the best experiment of my career. So he's an interesting player. I do believe that like just raw velocity does matter. Like I think if you take the same exact ratings, but he throws 97, I think he's a PL ace. So they got Ponce. They're probably hoping. Well,
I think he was moving Sean Watson to the bullpen too.
He moved Sean Watson to reserves.
Oh no!
Oh my gosh!
That was quick.
Yeah, he gave up on that real quick.
That is ugly. Only a 13 ERA.
I am of the firm belief that movement under 40 is just something you cannot use at the major league level.
Yes, and I would even go as far to say is I think there's maybe 1 or 2 pitchers that have succeeded with a 40 movement as a starter.
Yeah.
I think 45 personally is kind of my floor.
A reliever can get away with it if you use them in a certain way,
I
but
agree.
even then you're running the risk.
Mm-hmm. So
I was talking to him yesterday about Sean Watson, and my scout thinks his movement went down even worse than it was before.
Just a lot of ugly. But I mean, this is an experiment you make, though.
But again, when you talk about new GMs trying to learn the game, you see this guy, you see 60 overall, 65 potential. You not think that way. This guy is like a 50 overall potential just because of that movement. That's ceiling.
I'd go for
you gotta
35,
realize
40.
when the ratings are lying to you.
Yeah, and
you gotta have to identify what the game likes. Like right now, if you have a good eye as a hitter, you're going to be rated really well on your potential.
Yes.
With pitchers, it's the quality of the pitches. If they have good quality pitches, that potential is going to go up.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, and I think this is pretty much a league consensus between like the top GMs, these 2 numbers right here are absolutely irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's all about literally everything else here, and a little bit their injury and their personality. But yeah, so this guy definitely not a 65 potential.
And also, I'd say don't ignore stats. Like sometimes ratings lie and make a player look worse than he is or better than he is. If the guy is hitting well and he's done it for multiple seasons, he's probably a good hitter.
Yeah, I agree as well.
Yeah.
All the ratings don't capture everything. There's always stuff happening under the hood, and of course, there's the fog of war. So maybe your scout just doesn't hasn't picked up on something yet. Let's check in on Herrera. The pickup. Probably the talk of the offseason, continuing to play well. I was nervous because his avoid K was 35, but if that does tick up to 40, I mean, I don't know. I think that would make me sleep.
Still don't think he's worth it for the price. I'm glad we're getting to see what he can do in the Bronze League.
I'm assuming that either if they win the Bronze League, they're gonna go to the Silver League next year. I'm really gonna be interested in following this dude's career because he's such a weird player and he's so interesting in that for that reason.
Yeah.
All right. Any closing thoughts on the Bronze League before we move on to the trades?
Something that surprised me as I was digging into Detroit as an organization and into the draft, which is getting a little ahead of ourselves,
so mysterious,
is they only made 3 picks total in this entire draft. They're on their way up to Silver League, and
this is Detroit we're talking about.
Yes, Detroit.
Oh, that's
3 first-round picks, 3 good picks. I like all of them. But their farm is not a farm that is ready to move up to Silver League.
Detroit?
And with the addition of those, yes, Detroit. They have Whitley, who will be starting soon. And that's about it.
Yeah, all their other prospects are already on their team.
Yeah, everybody else is already playing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a move that really kind of baffled me, and I say that as somebody who bought those picks from them. But it's something I didn't realize until I was looking later. Like this seems like a move that a GM like Joey wouldn't normally make.
So I guess I'm interested in for other GMs. How much
value
do you guys
see? Farm might not look. But all his guys are on his roster now. It just recently happened. His team's fine. He'll be more than ready to make the push in CL next year. I'm not really sure why you say that. I mean, all these young guys on the roster.
I think he had by far the best farm.
Just 3 months ago, he had the best farm in the league. So, well, besides DC.
I'm going to make an interesting comp to real life. I remember, I think it was the Chicago White Sox. They had their crazy farm system that had like all the top prospects who they eventually pushed in like 2018, 2017, 2018, 2019 to the actual major league roster, and then they went from like a top system to like one of the worst systems in baseball, but their actual major league team started winning baseball games. So like you kind of got to balance that. Like, I see what you're saying, and like, yeah, they really now have really one real prospect left in the minor league system. But in the same vein, I actually think going all in and just saying I only care about first, not a bad strategy. At the end of the day, you're going to get the most bang for your buck in the first round. Because the truth is, after the first round and maybe the second round, the players that are left are maybe role players or, lottery tickets. But you look at like
Are those 3 guys Joko? Yeah, 21. What are the ages of them?
21.
They're almost ready?
17, but
he's... Joey McDaniel's really young, but the other guys are there.
Yeah, they're ready. So he's putting his chips in now.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think the Crippen and Purcell picks are, not like win now, but, there's definitely a belief that they're going to, help out on their push to the Premier League. The McDaniel pick, I think, is just because, he looks like he's going to be a good catcher that can hit. So
yeah, it doesn't matter where he plays. He's going to be a good bat.
Mm-hmm.
Sell pick actually is kind of odd just because he has Herrera. You would think he would expect Herrera to be there for the next 6 years. So,
well, you have to keep. You're right. I'm interested in seeing who else does he have in the outfield right now. So he has Fernandez, who's going to be there for the next 7 years.
Yeah.
Herrera, who's going to be there for the remainder of the contract, unless he opts out, which is a very real possibility. I mean, not really, I guess. But
yeah.
I mean, the point is, after 3 years, you're going to be either hoping he does or hoping he doesn't opt out. So
right, you're going to feel one way or another.
Even Shot, who was his second round last year, second pick overall. I mean, this is
that's really good. I mean, he has depth at the position already, so that's to waste the top seven. It's not a waste, but a top 17 pick on another center fielder who can't really hit power.
Is he? Could he play
I
center,
like
second
Purcell,
base?
but I think it was a case of Joey just going after his guy because I think he reached a bit for Purcell.
Well,
I
right
mean, he
now the
went
second baseman is Furu, whatever, who he's played well, but probably not a Premier League player. Do you think the idea would be to look at Purcell and say we'll slot him in at second base?
I mean, it could be. He's able to play anywhere, so he's not necessarily a center fielder, even though that's what he played.
And just to, I'm gonna back out this pick because when I was in the Bronze League, I had my guys who I was pretty confident with. But then what's going to happen is some negative TCR or some injuries, and then the guys that you planned on, sticking around and being very good for a decade are all of a sudden DFA'd, and it breaks your heart a little bit. So, when in doubt, depth is never a bad thing. And the truth is, again, it's Joey. He could just flip Purcell for a first round pick next year. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think all his other outfielders are lefties too, so he could be a platoon guy.
Good observation.
Yeah.
All right.
So I have a little thought on that. This is Crathan or Nathan. So I think when you're in a spot where you're making that push, making only first round picks does a couple things for you. One, it gets you guys who are either potentially going to contribute very soon or at least be high assets. If you need something else to make that push to the next level, you trade that first round pick for a guy who's now going to help you get to the Premier League the next year, get to back into the TOC if you're, sitting in fifth place or whatever. You've got high assets that you can use to get you up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
And if not, I mean, Purcell is so adaptable that you can place him anywhere that you get an injury and he can fill in and do an admirable job, probably.
I mean, think about there's a lot of guys who have very long major league careers just by versatility. So I think it's a safe pick, So, but yeah, I don't think Joey plans on him being the center fielder of the future.
No, I don't either.
All right. Do you guys want to start talking about the trades, which is also going to shift into the conversation about the draft because I think the vast majority of trades were about draft picks. So just to pull up the draft, we could talk about the draft for hours and hours and hours, but we all have things to do. So I have a list here of some of the trades that were made. I did delete a few trades smaller trades that I don't want to talk about too much, but a vast majority of the trades were involving a lot of these draft picks, including the first one, which was where Atlanta, who's with us right now, traded up to first place. So these two, first and third, swapped, and then sent $15 million along the way. So with that pick, Atlanta selected Rich Hartley. And with the third pick, Detroit selected Crippen. So I'm interested in your guess.
Didn't that open up the RP, the relief pitcher that was signed?
Oh, for Detroit?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Pretty sure that happened.
Yeah, that probably would be the money he used to pay Ponce.
That makes sense. Okay, so Crathan, so what are you happy with this pick? Would you do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't comfortable moving up to get Hartley if I had to give up another pick as well. That was something that we discussed, and I went back and forth on it. Felt like I need more prospects in my system. I need more guys who have the potential to do something down the line with where I am right now. I've got some guys who are kind of ready now, but I need to fill in that sort of next level and find the guys who are going to fill in those extra gaps. So I didn't want to give up another pick, but I wasn't going to do anything else with that $15 million. And so when the option came up that we discussed, shifting money in there, the money meant very little to me at that point that could help him out getting Ponce. So, or I'm assuming that is what he used it for after you guys mentioned that. But Hartley feels like, to me, he was kind of the most complete guy according to my scout, just according to everything I was looking at in the draft. So I felt like he was somebody who could help me at whatever outfield position I need the most help in, because I think he could be a serviceable center fielder and excellent in the other corner positions. So he's a guy who I think could help me for a long time. Where the other guys, I liked other guys, but I didn't think any of them were quite as complete or quite as exciting as Hartley. So I thought it was worth making that shift.
Yeah, so I'm interested in everyone's thoughts because you made a comment that I kind of agree with. That you said that you weren't really going to use the $15 million for anything, and I'm of an opinion that cash isn't super valuable in this league because it's not an asset. It's an asset that goes away very quickly, and I think we all have a bias towards longer term assets. Like you're going to get probably 7 seasons out of Rich Hartley, maybe even more, hopefully. But $15 million, okay, maybe you sign a mid-tier pitcher. So I'm curious for everybody else, like what do you guys really think the value of cash is in the CBA?
I was of the exact same mindset when I used cash to get 2-1 and the other picks from Joey, especially as a Bronze League team. What am I going to use that money for? I can't bid on players who are going to make that kind of money. I can't really bid on international free agents who are going to make that kind of money because they're going to go with Premier League teams. They're going to go with Silver League teams. So what else am I going to use it for?
Mm-hmm. I think the cash value is right on point. So if we wanted to grade, if I was personally grading that trade, it was a win for Detroit now, win for Atlanta later, 100%. Mm-hmm. It also sets up, I think cash is undervalued, and I think it's undertraded in some cases. And I think in these trades, Joey's setting up to maybe make a push in case somebody else makes moves. He's now capable of making moves. Mm-hmm. So now he can sign like he just did. He signed a relief pitcher for $12 million a year.
Yeah, and I think another thing too is, if I had to guess, Joey was, the GM of Detroit, was thinking, I have a great offense, I need pitching. He was probably maybe his scout thinks, okay, Krippen's the best pitcher in the draft. Krippen's not going to go top 2. He'll fall to me at 3, and I don't need another outfielder. That's the pick 1 and pick 2. So in that sense too, I think that it's a logical place for both these players on the teams, and I think it kind of works out well. So yeah, I like the deal. Let's move on so we don't spend too much time.
Well, I'll say one last thing is, it's kind of funny we're talking about these two players being swapped for each other when Los Angeles may have gotten the best player of the 3, in my opinion.
Ooh, Minges?
Minges.
Because he's a true center fielder.
Very good.
Because he plays defense.
I will tell
in this league, if you got a guy locked into
does not like
shortstop
midgets.
Yeah, but if you've got a guy locked into center field or shortstop, he's worth his weight in gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think for my team right now, my 3 shittiest hitters: catcher, shortstop, center field. Yeah. So I think if this guy puts up like a 110 weighted runs created plus whatever, and he plays a good center field, like a true center field, yeah, I think 1-2 makes sense. All right, so let's move on. Las Vegas. This is my trade that really didn't involve any draft picks except for a 4th rounder this year. I loaned out 2 players. Didn't really give up too much, and both these players were prospects I immediately threw on my team that both are playing well. Actually, Rice is the reigning player of the week in the Premier League, I believe. So we don't have to dive too much into that, but very much a win now move for me, and for Vegas, it's like, okay, yes, I can build my farm. I probably overpaid. I'll out myself. I really don't think I think a 2nd was probably a little much, but I really don't care too much. It's a 2nd. I won't lose the sleep that I'll lose over a 1st. So
I think it's a very classic kind of loan deal, really.
Yep. Yeah. All right, moving on. Tampa Bay sends a third for Ricky Rodriguez. So again, this is what we were talking about, where Carolina is going to turn it all apart, and they sent away Ricky Rodriguez for a third. Kind of like, almost like a borderline salary dump. Duncan, you here? All right. So I think more of a simple trade, but we can move on.
Ricky Rodriguez is such a like player that fits a team by Greg. It just fits Greg. Because I often find Greg and I go after the same type of players, and this is the kind of player that I had on my team a couple seasons ago because he fits what I'm trying to do. So.
I mean, good personality, good glove. So he'll play a good third base. The bat, it leaves a little bit to be desired. I think he. I guess his ratings have always.
I actually don't need your third baseman to be that good offensively. If he's league average, he's going to be top 5 in your league, easy.
All right, moving on. Another Carolina deal. They sent away their closer for a second-round pick. Was this a loan? I don't know. Maybe it wasn't a loan. So they traded this guy for a second. I think the value of an elite closer is probably a second. So.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair deal.
Part of the Carolina teardown that's going on.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good deal for both teams, especially New York, who's looking to win now.
Yeah.
I do think there are some teams in the league, generally newer GMs, that are afraid to trade a closer for a second because you see the blue numbers and you're only getting a second back, but it is fair value.
Yeah, because in the second, that's typically when relievers start to pop off the board. I feel like that's a pretty common thing. All right, moving on. Another first-round pick. So Toronto bought a pick with 3 prospects, and they used that pick to select David Carter. We've looked at Where. I think we looked at him a lot last week.
We looked at him last week because he got passed around last week too.
Yeah. So this is Where is like just been on a plane for the next.
He is one of those players, like I was saying. If you have a high I rating, the game is going to overrate you as far as your potential.
Yeah.
And maybe my scout's a little higher on his eye than yours is.
OSA's way higher on him than my scout is.
Yeah.
So he could be interesting. Mike Heiss.
Well, David Carter is definitely interesting, and he's really good too.
I think he was
David Carter is definitely a better player than any of those 3.
David Carter is like a classic Bob pick. Someone who's going to slot right in on his team and he's going to be disgustingly good right away.
Yeah, this is just a good player. Not the glove that you see with Hartley and Minges, but the bat seems pretty.
With left field, you can get away with it a couple times a week. No worries.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
you can put anybody you want in left field.
That's my exact plan. So yeah, David Carter, I think that's a good pick from Bob. I think generally, David Carter is the best player in the deal, and I think him. I'm not super high on Where or Richards. Heiss, maybe. I think this is a Bob win.
Yeah, I thought Carter was the best hitter in the draft, and I don't like any of those prospects. I had Where originally, and I don't think he's ever going to get above like Dev B or Dev A.
If Where was a good player, he wouldn't have been traded 3 fucking times by now.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So moving on. This is involving the Phoenix first-round pick, which has absolutely just been passed around by half the league.
Yeah.
So that Phoenix pick ended up being Steve Hamlin.
Which was me. It came back to me before the end.
Oh, so it came back to you?
Yeah, I traded up for Hamlin. I mean, maybe I'm overrating him. I was kind of shocked that Hamlin fell down that far.
Mm-hmm.
He's a 2-time Fielder Award winner in college at right field. The bat looks pretty good if it develops right.
The problem with Hamlin is he's one development stumble away from being just a guy.
I don't disagree with that. But I had no.
If everything goes perfectly, he's gonna be a pretty good EL outfielder.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's got to go perfectly.
So Hamlin, along with Tello, and I think Tello is worth a look at.
Tello was a guy that I was talking about shopping last week. Yeah.
And this is him as a reliever, but he's not a reliever. Let's make him look like a starter. This is really what he looks at, and that's actually I want to show you guys. It's like a little trick. If you want to, like, you can't actually edit anything. None of this is saved, but if you just swap this out, you can see the pitcher ratings between pitcher and starting pitcher and reliever. So this is him as a starter, which is like his actual value, in my opinion. So.
Well, damn, I learned something today. That's cool.
Yeah, no, that's like a little, because that's how, like, especially when you're like in the second or third round of the draft, whenever you look at a bad starting pitcher, you can just look at them in game, swap this little field, and see if they'll be a good reliever.
I've been wanting to know how to do that for literally years, so that's great.
Yeah, so Tello, I mean, this is a guy who's probably a 3 or 4 at the Premier League level anyway, according to OSA. Maybe that's a bit of a hot.
I look
he's
at
a
him
lefty.
and just
He's a lefty,
stopper.
actually.
I just see stopper when I look at him.
You know what I want to say? What's the difference between Tello and like Bob Watts? You know what I mean? He's had a.
Like he'd be a fine starter, but he could be an elite stopper. So I look at him and I see stopper.
True. I mean, I guess that just depends where you want to put him. But either way, he has value. This is a guy that has very real value, along with Danny Lopez. I'm not sure which guy this is. None of them are really elite.
I think. Yeah.
No. Well, none of them are crazy.
He was.
Good.
He's a fielder, but I didn't think he was a center fielder.
He retired already.
Now there's the Chicago guy. Okay, the very first one.
Yeah, it's this guy. I mean, he could be okay. There's no power.
It's a very out of the park 22 build for a player.
100%. When all of that was traded for the player who would become Zach Runge, and was that a pick that you ended up making?
Yes.
Okay, because you made like what, 5 picks?
I made 5 picks in the first round. Yes.
Who looks like a true catcher with a good bat. Is that what
Zach
you saw?
Runge. Zach Runge I thought was the best catcher in the draft, followed by Logan Davidson and Adam Moffett. So even though I'm heavy on catching prospects in my system, I wanted Runge from the second that I got to very high on scouting accuracy.
It's rare you can say this, but he has a Hall of Fame ceiling just because of his position.
Yeah. I mean, we have there's what, Stafford, who's the only good offensive catcher I can think of off the top of my head. And then doesn't Toronto have the catcher that can hit?
There's this guy in my system. In a way, I guess you would say it. He could be a decent catcher.
Gotcha. But yeah, it's definitely a weak position league wide, so I like the pick.
So you're talking Hall of Fame for a 19-year-old catcher? Jeez, give it 2 seasons, he might have 50 contact. Catchers bomb all the time.
It's true, but he is 19 typically. Once they get over the age of 18 is when I start.
Dude, Zach Runge is literally Johnny Bench. What are you talking about? That's my comp. So, interesting trade. So obviously, Steve Hamlin came back to you because even though you sent him back to Chicago. You gave up a bit for him, but if he develops, I think it's all worth it. And Tello hurts a little bit, but if Tello does not fit your window.
Tello didn't fit the window. I wanted as close to first round value in return as I could get out of him, and I shopped him, and this was the best deal that presented itself.
All right, so let's move on a little bit.
Opinions here real fast on that trade. I got kind of stuck in between having no scouting accuracy for any players in the draft, so I was trying to trade down, and Danny Lopez looked a hell of a lot better to my scout before last sim.
I mean, either way, you got Tello, who I think is a good player, and if I'm correct in
Yeah, Tello is a good starter, especially for a team in Chicago's position.
Mm-hmm. So, moving on, another first-round pick, Carolina's first, which ended up becoming DJ Grant, along with all the value that you get out of a 12th-round pick, along with Zach Suter for Las Vegas's first. So let's look at these guys. We have DJ Grant. Let's look for him. He's right here.
Vegas 25, yeah.
Interesting player. Not a super high ceiling as a starter, but he's only 20, so he has a little bit of room to grow. According to OSA. So DJ Grant and Zach Suter for the player who become Chris, the pick that would become Chris, however the hell you say his name.
Schwafel.
Who is interesting. Looks like a lot of power. Low avoid K, but he'll play. He's like you can put him at right field and not worry too much about it. I'm a believer that really the only thing that matters too much in the outfield is arm, and right field specifically. Interesting deal. Let's look at Zach Suter real quick. This is a player we talked about earlier today.
Yeah.
That you said that you liked. I'm gonna offer a hot take. I really don't think. I think Suter and Grant are just okay. I also think, Schwafel is just okay. So this was your pick, Mike. So, what do you think?
Schwafel was another guy that I liked. I heavily scouted this draft because I knew that I had a lot of assets in it and a lot of assets that I could move without having to leverage the future. So I didn't necessarily set out to get 5 first-round picks, but I did. I was very high on all of the guys that I picked. The only thing I do regret in hindsight is in the second round, moving my second round pick next year because I had forgotten about the third. So I've already traded away more of my draft for next year than I would like.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to give Mike some credit because Schwafel looks so much better than my scout, who I'm also very high on. So.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, this is just OSA, so, grain of salt. We have no idea of the accuracy of this right here. So, but you see, even if OSA has, a fraction of truth in it, you can see the ceiling that you want with the 17-year-old. So, yeah, interesting trade. Anytime that you draft a 17-year-old, anything could happen. So, yeah, not a bad deal. Plus, doesn't Vegas need pitching, if I'm remembering correctly? So that's kind of a good fit
needed
too.
Pitching.
So,
we talked about that deal for a little bit. He got some advice from some other GMs, and we came to that deal.
Mm-hmm. All right, yeah, good deal. Moving on. Another bigger trade. So a first and 2 seconds and prior drafts for Houston's first, which ended up becoming Max Shoot. Let's see if we can find this guy. Looks like a third baseman that, could actually play a decent, not a great third base, but a decent third base with a pretty major bat. He's also 15. This trade
has a lot of power to work out.
And he's got that lack of gap powers. It's not a fatal flaw, but it also kind of is a fatal flaw too.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's just a lot of volatility here.
It has speed, so the gap doesn't even matter. It wouldn't. Even if it was high, it wouldn't really matter much.
Yeah. So you think that I'm gonna be honest. I really never look at gap too much unless a player doesn't have any power.
Gap used to not matter at all back, a few OOTP versions ago, but it actually does have some weight these days.
And so, Tommy, were you saying that because he has a low, let's pretend that he had like an 80 gap, because he's not fast, it won't matter anyway?
Well, this is going toward the perfect team side of things, but yeah, the devs have already said that gap is pretty limited unless you have good to above speed anyway. So
good to know. So my thought on this trade, Shoot, you can see what Cincinnati sees, even though this is just OSA, that you can dream on him. So, but a lot of volatility whenever you pick a 15-year-old. So we might never talk about a Shoot ever again, but he also might Be
you never know. Shoot was Cincinnati's guy from the start.
If that's your guy, you go out and get him.
Yeah, because I had talked to him about trading for that pick, and he was like, "I think you're going to take him, and I'm not trading it." So.
Fair enough. And I think if you're Cincinnati, your goal is that, hey, 2072, this is going to be 125.
Yeah.
And if you took Shoot at 114, maybe it's a good deal, especially if he's your guy. All right, so let's move on. Another Philadelphia deal. They pick up another first, so they trade a second, a third, and David Jones. Let's look at David Jones real quick. So looks like he can be like an actual starter. Looks okay. You see the ceiling. Personally, I like maybe a little bit more movement or stuff, but either way, he'll be fine.
My scout wasn't quite as high on him, but he's going to be fine in a rotation someday.
Mm-hmm. And he was traded for the pick that would go on to become Anthony Morales.
Antonio Morales.
Yeah. Third baseman, do you see him as a third baseman or outfielder?
I am going to see what works for him. He could be a third baseman. He could be a corner outfielder. Worst comes to worst, I stick him at first base, and he becomes my new version of Art Woolridge.
Either way, he's going to be fun as an offensive player.
I was going to say, as
he's
a
got
third
a good
baseman,
bat.
he
He's
looks
got those
like
wheels.
Suzema with wheels. So I like this pick a lot. I mean, it's OSA.
He was a guy that I actually passed on when I picked Schwafel, and then I was talking to another GM about how he's such a good player, but at 22 years old, he might not fit my rebuild window. And the GM was like, well, if you want him, go get him and then loan him out to somebody who does need him.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be the route that I go with him.
Yeah, I might be DMing you this offseason about him. If this is what we think. So yeah, I mean, I like Morales. I'm not super high on Jones. I think a second or a third is kind of whatever value. I think Cincinnati, probably didn't extract all the value that they were looking for out of their first. So, any other thoughts?
Morales was a guy that I really liked and was considering kind of moving up to see if I could get a hold of him, but he was gone before a pick I was going to be able to trade up to once I had some conversations. So yeah, he's somebody I'm curious to see how he develops.
Yeah. All right. Next deal involves my first round pick, which is kind of floating around the league. Carolina gave up a lot to get their guy. Well, not really a lot. I mean, this Tyler Allen.
It's the first 2 seconds and some trimming.
I mean, it depends what you view. I mean, OSA loves Tyler Allen's bat. The glove, not so much. You can stick him in left field, but the bat, according to OSA, is pretty elite. And then they gave up their Cleveland's first next year, and that's going to be 130. So this is more.
Yeah.
I mean, so when you look at it that way, the second round picks have a little bit of value. I think. Oh, we don't anymore. I think, don't we have both GMs of this deal in the call? Do any of you guys want to pop up?
Yeah, I'm in. I mean, I had one first, I have one third, and then nothing for this draft. So I've already I blew my wad, so to speak, for this season and probably next season. So to me, this is saving for later, because I felt like I didn't really put any time looking through the draft, seeing who they actually haven't. I just made a list based on my requirements and then imported them in Stats Plus and called it a day.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, this was more about catching more later. I had a couple of other offers that I was floating around. I almost took Chicago's offer, but this came around and I just felt like I got more value for later. Even if half of those don't make it, it still gives me an opportunity to have at least one TCR outside of the first round.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely, if you're going to go quantity, I mean, you want the more that you can possibly get. So you have 2 seconds, these are probably both, especially the Vancouver pick, that's probably going to be maybe 45 overall. So that'll be interesting. This is probably going to be 60 overall. 2072, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe 50 overall, or not 50.
How
55.
dare you?
I mean, I just, who knows? Anything's possible. I don't know. I think that if Cincinnati gets some pitching, I think that they might kind of do what you did this year, next year. The fourth, you can still get decent players in the fourth, and you got 3/4. So, and then the 10th, anything's possible there. Get a 15-year-old and cross your fingers. So,
for what it's worth, I really like that deal for Orlando. Because like he said, when you're trying to build up your system, more lottery tickets is always better. Tyler Allen, field, and he's slow. I don't like those players, but that's just personal bias. But he can't hit.
Yeah, I have noticed that slow players tend to really struggle, especially when it comes to BABIP stuff. They can drive you a little crazy.
Yeah, I also think that my farm is not exactly the greatest. It's probably one of the worst. So this opportunity to put something into the farm.
Yeah, and who knows? I think one of the kind of complaints with this draft class was that there's a lot of top tier guys, the top say 5 to 10, but then after that, I thought the second or third round of this draft, the 2070 draft, was kind of who knows? Maybe 71 and 72 are a little deeper. All right, so let's move on. The pick who would become Schwafel.
I didn't realize I made both first-round picks in this deal.
We covered both these players, and it looks like Vegas just, So Vegas gets a second, I guess. So we can skip this one because we've talked about most of it. Chicago and Kentucky. So Kentucky traded away the player that would go on to be Walton Durand, the pick that would go on to become Walton Durand, for really Dave Rudge in a second. So let's look at Rudge real quick. So good bat. What happened here? Because wasn't he...
OOTP 23 happened here.
You tell me what happened here, because I have no idea.
Yeah, because I remember him... This was when I
23 happened. I mean, that's all. It's point blank.
Yeah, Adam's right. That's what happened.
If you got a first out of him, though, that's not a bad deal. I mean, yeah, you had to give up a second, but let's look at Durand.
Durand, I will say, because I wrote down league awards for the players that were drafted. Even though he's coming out of the 14 and up league, he is one of the most decorated hitters in the draft that was taken in the first round.
Really?
He is a 67 and 68 14 and up hitter of the year, 67 MVP for the entire league, and has won Great Glove every year of his career.
Wow. If you're Chicago then, and Dave Rudge has done nothing but disappoint you for the past 4 seasons, I love this deal for you. So, all right, so let's move on a little bit. I think we only have a handful of 2 trades left. The pick that would go on to become Steve Hamlin was dealt again.
That Phoenix first round pick again.
Yeah. For the
passed
second
around like Austin's mom.
I was wondering how long it would take for a joke to be made. So for Dave Silva, Zachary Lang, and a second, let's look at Silva real quick.
Silva is a guy that I actually really like. OSA is not very high on him.
Yeah, my scout's a little higher.
But with me drafting Runge and already being heavy on catching prospects, I just saw him as expendable because of it.
Mm-hmm. And then Lang as well.
Lang is one of those players that I think is highly rated because of the eye.
Yeah. I mean, according to OSA, I'm going to peek into what my scout thinks. Very similar to OSA. So, from that side of things, and I'm not sure who they took in the second round at Houston. We can peek a little bit. I think that ended up being, we'll call it 14. Eli Whelan, who is a reliever.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not super impressed with any of these guys, but we talked about Steve Hamlin before. My personal bias, I'm not like super high on him either. But I think if you're Vegas and you like these guys, and you get them, potentially you get maybe a good stopper out of it. Maybe it's not a bad deal. So, I see both sides. Let's move on a little bit. I think this is our final trade of the night or afternoon.
And it's me yet again.
You bought out essentially the rest of Detroit's draft for $10 million in your pick next year, and you said that you regret this?
I don't think that it's a bad deal necessarily. I just regret it because I've already leveraged my second and third round picks next year when they project to be top 3 picks.
Gotcha.
I would probably still do it again because I like the player that I grabbed there, Chad Lansdale.
The player
and
you grabbed here?
I like the player that I got at 2-1. And I like this draft a little more than I like what next year projects to be.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, this is a maybe, 2-2, and this is a definite 2-1. And if you get the guy you got there, and you're essentially spending $10 million for, 6 lottery tickets, I think it's a fine trade. Again, I'm not super high on cash value personally, so I see it, and I get it. So, and I think that's. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I think there's a trend with Detroit here. That's just how I feel. That's twice now he's wanted money out of it, and it could have been by chance, but I feel like he wants first in the BL.
Yeah, 100%.
And if the other two may or may not have made moves in the last 48 hours, but if anybody else made moves, he needs to be prepared to make moves himself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not sure if you take a look at his record against the other two teams. I don't know how he feels about that. If he feels like confident he can beat both teams.
There's a way to look at that. Does anyone
also,
know
if
how?
Joey doesn't get promoted, that contract gets even more expensive next year.
Orlando knows about that. That's what happened to Orlando before when I was pushing before. I thought I was going to get promoted, but then like 4 seasons in a row, one of them I didn't make the top 3. And then both times I went up against a team that I knew that if it was the other team, whoever won it outright, I thought I could beat. But the team that I had to play against, I didn't think I could beat. And both times I lost in 3. So I think Orlando is a lot better shape this year to win if they have to go in the
look at that,
series.
45 and 45 all time.
Yeah. So Detroit is 3 and
they're
3.
Split, all of them.
So let's see what Vancouver and
Vancouver and Orlando. Yeah.
Ooh, Vancouver.
Ooh, Vancouver.
It's still pretty close. I mean, that looks a little lopsided. That's just that could be like a 1-run game in there somewhere.
Yeah.
A lot more. I think they're more one-run games, but that's Orlando.
Mm-hmm. So
but
go ahead.
Also, Orlando changed some pitching out, and I picked up a third baseman and a second baseman within the last 24 hours.
Yeah, so head to head, all 3 teams, close.
I know I keep bouncing in and kind of disappearing, but I had a couple things I wanted to comment on. Unfortunately, I agree with the assessment of Tyler Allen. I think I hope that OSA is right, more so than my scout, but in 23, the lack of speed, I think, is a big thing. But what I really wanted to call out is Atlanta. I don't know if you have a mic and you can talk, but you're on the clock, and so I would love to hear you talk through what you're going to do here in the 4th round.
So he's been bouncing in and out too. I'm not sure.
All right, yeah. So I've got half an hour, I guess. So I've got a number of guys lined up that I'm looking at. So I will have to go look at that in a minute and see who's still there after the last several picks have happened. So when I traded my second round pick to basically end up with 10 picks in the 3rd and 4th round, just to continue to fill in depth in the organization. And I feel like I've been able to pick up some guys who, so far, for sure what they're going to do, but there's at least some potential upside as a reliever or like a guy who can fill in with a bat occasionally, and depending on development, because a couple of guys, I think I got a couple who were like 17 or 19 who might have some chance to get some development spikes with some luck. So yeah, I'm just trying to fill in some extra pieces in my organization, continue to get some more prospects, because the last couple of years I've made some big changes to my overall farm. My farm was a disaster when I was in the PL, because I sold everything I had, including my picks and my farm, to get to the PL, and then the PL treated me like I was trash. So I decided that I needed to make a change to the way I approach that. So my farm is, I already feel a lot better about my farm. I'm a lot more stingy in trades. Like I was talking about some potential trades to move up in the draft, and I just didn't feel comfortable with moving some of the guys that people liked, and that's because I think some of them have a chance to contribute for me down the line and be that guy who makes a difference, as like maybe a third starter or whatever. But yeah, a lot of it's just adding more pieces, even if they're third and fourth round guys. I actually looked at my draft history, and the fourth and fifth rounds are where most of my my WAR has come from. Part of that's that I've only made like 2 first round draft picks or 3 first round draft picks since I joined the league, but 4 including Hartley. So hopefully he demolishes all those other ones. But I had a 5th round pick who was Rick Schrader, who tore it up until he sadly died. And then I had, a couple of 4th round guys who've done pretty well for me, but just adding, like last year, I think I added 4 or 5 third round picks. This year I'm adding 5 third rounders, 5 fourth rounders, to go with Hartley. So yeah, it's just about acquiring guys who have some potential to maybe turn into something, and if not, they at least maybe provide, some theoretical competition at the minor league level that maybe somebody grows with them sitting there or whatever. So that's kind of my goal right now.
All right. So I guess to wrap it all up, does anyone else have any closing thoughts?
Did you ever find out what Detroit and Vancouver's head-to-head was?
They're 3-3, I believe.
They're 3-3, yeah.
Oh, I thought that was Orlando.
They, both.
Yeah, both were 3-3.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was like 3-3 and then 3-3 and then like 4-2. So they're all pretty neck and neck. Top of the BL is tight.
Very.
All right then. I guess we'll wrap it up there. It was good to talk to you guys. And next week, probably Sunday night, but I'll let you guys know whenever I have a chance. So thanks for everyone for joining me, and thanks for listening, everybody. All right, I'll talk to you guys next week.
Good.
See ya.
See you guys.